Brad, I know you're feeling pretty good about the position that Joe Biden is in walking into this, but how worried are you about live fact checking or just a Donald Trump who never cared about the rules anyway? Why would he start now?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously going to be a concern. We saw just how rattling it was when he did it to Hillary in 2016. The media was unprepared to hold him to account then. I think did better in 2020, but you're right. The combination of trying to hold him to account could envelop every single answer on that show. And I think there is some legitimate concern of, is it really the moderator's role to correct everything that they say? Should that be left up to the American people? So I think, I think there's a reasonable, happy medium there. I think the moderators that I'm sure CNN will choose will be, they have a great set a bench of experienced moderators. And so I think I trust these news organizations to handle it better probably than the commission here. So we'll look forward to it. And Joe, just to the point of your son getting his driver's license, where I'm from, our response to that would just be bless your heart. So good luck with that.
Bless your heart. All right. Well, Rick, come on in here, because obviously we have seen a debate between Donald Trump and Joe Biden before in the 2020 cycle. We know how perhaps undignified at certain points it was to characterize it. How do you prep this go around for a debate between Donald Trump, who isn't always reluctant to stray from the truth, if you're Joe Biden, who tends to stick more to the truth?
Yeah, I think Joe Biden's going to have to really figure out a way to, distance himself from Trump, but also be really on alert, because I agree it's hard to fact check Donald Trump. But I mean, to some degree, that's going to be Biden's job. He can't just ignore factual misrepresentations coming from his opponent, because you can't rely on the moderators. CNN has a bad track record with Donald Trump. The much discussed town hall that CNN did during the campaign with Donald Trump turned into a lie fest, and they lost control of it. Donald Trump is a disruptive guy. He knows how to take control of these situations. He's got enough, capacity to really, be a disruptive force in something like a debate. And General Joe Biden, I mean, come on. I mean, he's a dignified guy who tries to play by the rules, even if there are no rules to be played by. And so I think that they're going to have to throw out the playbook with Joe Biden, force him to not think about debates the way he traditionally has. I mean, he's got 50 years of political experience debating on one set of rules. And this is a different time, a different place, and a different opponent. You've got to throw out that rule book and be ready to really go to town on Donald Trump and have a firm grasp of the facts so that he can correct the record, because if the record stands, he's going to look really bad.
I still have so many questions for both of you here, Brad, including who's going to watch. Nobody's going to mourn, I realize, the end or the death of the Commission on Presidential Debates, but there was a purpose here to not just have a presidential debate, for instance, on a single cable network. A lot of people won't even be able to watch that. We spend all day talking about cord cutting here, Brad. Are we going to lose something when the commission goes away?
I mean, possibly. It remains to be seen. I mean, there are ways that I imagine that these candidates will ensure that folks in their orbits will be able to watch. I think, as we've seen time and again, the first debate usually is a very a highly watched affair. But you got to remember, the true thing that sway these debates is the spin afterwards. It's does a candidate give the other campaign a moment to really attack them with and run it in paid media over and over and over. So if Biden has a bad moment, if Trump has a bad moment, trust me, swing voters will see it in paid ads throughout the country. One has a good moment, another has a good moment. You'll see that in paid ads across the country. So they will get down, but the start to finish, kind of full broad spectrum, watching the debate. If you want to watch it, there will be ways to watch it. I'm sure there'll be watch parties and things on college campuses and et cetera. So I'm less concerned about that. I mean, the average viewer today is a little more savvy than they were probably 10 years ago. So there's an ability to find any program you want to watch these days.
This is going to raise the stakes, though, Kaylee. In that world, everyone's just going for a moment.
Right. You're looking for a soundbite or whatever
Anything
can
to
go
get on
viral
Twitter,
on
yeah.
TikTok, or assuming we still have it at that point, we should, right? Both campaigns are on it, but it's about what gets replayed over and over again the next day, which just underscores, Rick, how much of this, especially for two candidates who are the age that they are, this is about performance and being able to show stamina and dexterity and speak in your speech when you're ad-libbing, not necessarily reading off a teleprompter. Is this ultimately really going to be about policy, especially because these two candidates are so well known, as are a lot of their stances?
Kelly, that's a fair statement. What do people really take away from these? I was there at the debate when George Bush looked at his watch. George H.W. Bush looked at his watch, and that's the only thing people could remember. That was a Bill Clinton win because of a enforced error on the part of the president. And remember, we have some history with these two guys. They have debated a couple times, and arguably Donald Trump lost the first debate because he kept talking over Joe Biden. I mean, like, he went in loaded for bear. He was not going to give Biden a chance to speak. And Biden so famously said, shut up and let me finish my answer. And that became, there's nothing substantive about that, but it was like, wow, right. Joe Biden didn't fall asleep at the debate. This is good. And he actually pushed back on Donald Trump, who was kind of being a bully. So, I think you're right, Kayleigh. I think these have the opportunity to showcase the vitality of the candidates, but also their ability to sort of operate under the heat of those Klieg lights that are going to be on that studio in Atlanta. And I do think it's going to be that dynamic between the two of them, because I don't care what moderator you get. I'm sure CNN will post up some really good ones. They're going to lose control of this debate in the first 5 minutes, and then it's going to be mano a mano, and we'll see what happens then.
Picturing the weigh-in at some point here, Kayleigh. I feel like this is like pay-per-view stuff. Was this on purpose, Brad, to make sure RFK Jr. was not allowed on the stage? I know that he's not on the ballot in most states, but there's some polls showing him 15 to 20%. He could potentially qualify for an old-fashioned commission debate.
I don't know. I think it's a roll of the dice with who RFK hurts and helps. A lot of his conspiracy-based theories on vaccines and et cetera, have traditionally have a home in the Trump orbit. His, last name is a home in the Democratic orbit, and there's not enough data to suggest. Polling goes both ways on this. So, I don't know. I think, I agree with Rick. I thought he had a really good analysis of that. If you can't get to 270 because you're not on enough states, then you should not be in these debates. I agree with that. I think what's interesting here, though, is, if I were Trump, I'd be a little more careful of how he's approaching these debates, because right now he's setting the standard where Trump has very high expectations and Joe Biden has very low expectations. And so if Joe Biden doesn't literally fall asleep at the podium, he may have a win and may have won the expectations game, which is a big part of these debates as well.
That's right.
Rick, finally, I know we just had a whole conversation about how much of this is about performance over policy, but is a debate the best chance for Joe Biden to actually clarify what his policy in regard to Israel is, considering all the back and forth we have seen in the last few weeks?
Yeah, I think it certainly gives him a chance to talk directly to voters, and he has been sort of flip-flopping on this, which is all unforced errors on his part, right? He was fine with the approach he took. He decided to veer the other way. Republicans now are taking advantage of that, especially in the House of Representatives, forcing Democrats to take sticky votes on Israel. The bottom line is he needs to convince people that he's got a firm grasp of the economy, because nobody is going to decide this election on Israel, but it is going to be decided on the economy. And regardless of what the economic measures are today, especially with the CPI, he isn't getting that through to the American people. And if that's not the major topic of his conversation, he's cheating himself and his administration on the progress they've made, and he will not be able to get voters to start thinking differently about the economy.